She came back after betraying me, but she never expected I was no longer the same man or that my answer would leave her completely devastated. Before we go on, hit subscribe and drop a comment telling us which city you're tuning in from. She didn't cry. She didn't say it with guilt. She didn't even look down. She said it as if she were asking me to pass the salt. I'm back with my ex now. Wish me the best and don't be mad. I remember perfectly how her voice sounded at that moment. Calm, soft, as if everything we had lived together weighed absolutely nothing, as if I were replaceable. And the worst part is that for a few seconds I didn't know what to say. I just looked at her and felt something break inside me, but it wasn't immediate. It was slow, as if a crack started in the center of my chest and spread silently until it left me empty. Are you serious? I asked with a voice I didn't even recognize. She sighed as if I were the problem. I don't want to make this difficult. Yes, it just happened. We started talking again, we saw each other, and I realized I never got over him. Never got over him. That phrase stuck in me like a knife because I had gotten over her past, her insecurities, everything she brought with her when we started. Or at least I thought so. I met her 2 years earlier in a small coffee shop near my work. She was sitting alone, looking at her phone with an expression between boredom and sadness. She wasn't the most striking person in the place, but she had something, a kind of melancholy that attracted me immediately. I don't usually talk to strangers, but that day something pushed me. Is this seat taken? I asked her. She looked up surprised and smiled slightly. Not now. That smile was the beginning of everything. We started seeing each other more and more. At first it was casual, then it became routine, and then a need. She told me about her ex pretty early on. We lasted almost 5 years. She told me one night while we were walking in the rain. It was intense. Intense was her favorite word to describe him. Intense meant they argued a lot. Intense meant he would ignore her for days. Intense meant he would come back whenever he felt like it. I, on the other hand, was stable. I was always there, I always answered, I always listened, and I thought that was enough. How naive I was. The first few months were perfect, or at least it seemed so. She looked at me as if I were everything she needed. She told me that with me, she felt at peace, that I was different. With you, everything is easy, she repeated. And I believed her. I gave her everything, time, attention, patience. Even when I noticed that sometimes she would fall silent, staring into space, as if remembering something or someone. What are you thinking about? I would ask her. Nothing. She would answer quickly, too quickly. I should have seen it coming. The signs were always there. I just chose to ignore them. Everything started to change so subtly that at first I didn't notice. Messages that took longer to arrive. Small excuses. Last-minute cancellations. Sorry, I'm tired. I don't feel well today. We'll talk tomorrow. Yes, at first I understood. We all have bad days. But then it became constant, and something inside me started to get restless. One night, while we were having dinner, her phone buzzed. She picked it up quickly, too quickly, and put it face down. Who is it? I asked. Nobody. Nobody. That word again. Nobody texts you at 10 at night. She looked at me with a mixture of annoyance and nervousness. Now you're going to interrogate me. That's where I stopped because I didn't want to be that kind of man. The jealous one, the insecure one, the one who ruins everything with distrust. So I smiled. No, forget it. But I didn't forget. The following days were worse. I noticed she was distant, cold. She didn't hug me the same way. She didn't seek me out, and when she did, it was mechanical, as if she were fulfilling a duty. Once I tried to talk to her. I feel like you're far away, I told her. Is something wrong? She rolled her eyes. You're always overthinking. Always. Another word that started to hurt. I just want to understand. There's nothing to understand. She interrupted me. I'm fine, but she wasn't, and neither was I. The night everything fell apart. I remember it as if it were engraved in fire. We had arranged to meet at her apartment. I arrived with food, as always. I thought we could fix things, talk calmly. When I entered, something felt different. The air, the silence. She was sitting on the sofa with her hands clasped, as if she had rehearsed what she was going to say. We need to talk, she said. That phrase is always the beginning of the end. I sat in front of her, trying not to show the lump in my throat. Tell me. And then she said it without tears, without a pause, without a soul. I'm back with my ex now. Wish me the best, and don't be mad. And in that instant, I understood that everything I had ignored, everything I had justified, had led me exactly to that moment. But I didn't know yet that that was just the beginning of something much worse. For a few seconds after she said it, the world stopped having sound. I didn't hear anything, not her breathing, not the noise of the street, not even my own thoughts. Just that phrase repeating in my head like a cruel echo. I'm back with my ex. I stared at her, hoping that at any moment she would smile and say it was a joke, that it was all a test, that she wanted to see my reaction, but no. She was still sitting there, calm, as if she had let go of a burden and was now breathing better. And that's it? I finally asked. That's all you have to say, she shrugged. I didn't want to make it more complicated. I felt a heat rise from my chest to my face. Not make it complicated. I repeated, we were together for 2 years. I know, and that's what I deserve. One sentence, and that's it. She sighed this time with impatience. What do you want me to do? Cry? Pretend I don't love him? That I love him hit me harder than anything else. So, were you using me? I asked with a cracking voice. All this time, she didn't answer quickly. It wasn't like that at first. At first, another stab, but then it changed. She continued. We started talking again, and I couldn't help it. I couldn't help it. As if it were something inevitable, as if I never had a real chance. I got up from the sofa, unable to continue sitting in front of her. Since when? She hesitated, and that silence confirmed everything. Tell me the truth, I insisted. A few months ago. Months. I felt short of breath. Months. I repeated incredulously. And what was I? In the meantime, she looked down for the first time. I didn't want to hurt you. I let out a bitter laugh. Too late for that. I don't remember exactly how I got out of that apartment. I just know that at some point I was walking down the street, with my hands shaking and my head spinning. Everything fit now. The late messages, the excuses. The distance wasn't stress, wasn't tiredness. It was him. It was always him, and I was the idiot who stayed. I didn't sleep that night. I reviewed every conversation, every memory, every moment looking for signs I had missed. And I found them. Of course I found them. Deleted messages, changes in attitude, small lies that at the time seemed insignificant. It was all there. I just didn't want to see it, because trusting is easier than facing the truth. The following days were strange. I didn't cry, I didn't scream, I didn't break anything. I just felt empty. I went to work, came home, ate without hunger, slept without resting like a robot. But inside, everything was in ruins, and the worst part was not that she had left. It was how she did it without respect, without guilt, as if I didn't matter. A week later, I made the mistake everyone makes. I went on her social media, and there they were photos together, smiles, comments. Finally back, red heart. I always knew they were meant for each other. I felt nauseous. It had only been a few days, and it already seemed like she had never known me, as if I had been a parenthesis, a break, a temporary option. I closed the app, but it was too late. That image was etched in my mind. Her laughing. With him. How she used to laugh with me. That night something changed. It wasn't immediate. It wasn't explosive. It was cold, very cold. I looked in a mirror and didn't recognize myself. Seriously, are you going to stay like this? I said to myself with dull eyes. No energy, no dignity, after everything I gave, after how she treated me. No. That's where something inside me hardened, because suddenly I understood. I didn't lose her. She lost me, and she didn't know it yet. I started change at first small things. I went back to the gym. I stopped checking her profile. I started going out more, even if I didn't feel like it. I forced myself, because I knew that if I stood still I would sink. And little by little something started to awaken. It wasn't happiness, it was determination. I needed to prove to myself that I wasn't what she had decided I was. I wasn't replaceable, I wasn't weak, and I definitely wasn't going to be the man she left behind. A month later, someone at work told me something I didn't expect. Hey, wasn't your girlfriend the one who's dating that guy again? I felt my stomach tighten. Yes, I replied dryly. The guy hesitated for a moment. I heard they're not doing as well as it seems. I looked up. What do you mean? He shrugged. Nothing for sure. They just say he's still the same as before. The same as before. I smiled slightly. Of course he is. People don't change that easily. And for the first time since everything happened, I felt something different. Not sadness, not pain, something darker, something more patient, because I understood that this wasn't over yet and that sooner or later she would come back. But this time I wouldn't be the same man she left. It wasn't immediate. There was no sudden message or a midnight call. But I felt it before I saw it, as if something in the air had changed, as if a poorly closed story was starting to turn back towards me. It had been almost 4 months since that night. For months in which I rebuilt every part of me that she had left broken. And no, it wasn't pretty. There were days when I wanted to write to her. Days when I would open her chat and just stare at the keyboard, imagining 1,000 things I could say, but I never did because I understood something fundamental. If I talked to her again from that place, I would lose all the progress I had built. So I kept going. I trained harder, worked more hours, I read, I learned, I stayed away from everything that reminded me of her, and one day, without realizing it, I stopped thinking about her when I woke up. Then I stopped thinking about her before I went to sleep, and then the day came when someone else started to notice the change. "You look different," a coworker told me. "More confident." I smiled because it wasn't just appearance, it was real. The first sign was a like. Yes, something as simple as that. A picture of me at the gym. Nothing special, but it was her. After months of absolute silence, I looked at it for a few seconds without reacting. Before that would have made my heart race. Now it just made me raise an eyebrow. "Interesting," I muttered. I didn't pay it any mind. Or at least I tried to tell myself that. But the next day, she appeared again. This time watching my stories, all of them without skipping any, as if she wanted to remember or be remembered. A week later, the message came. "Hi, how are you?" That was it. No apologies, no explanations, just those 3 words. I read them several times, expecting to feel something. Rage, nostalgia, anxiety, but no. All I felt was clarity, because at that moment I understood exactly why she was writing to me. It wasn't about me, it was about her, it was always about her. I didn't reply immediately, I left her there. Hours, then a whole day, not as a game, not as revenge, but because for the first time she wasn't my priority, and that changed everything. The next day she wrote again, "I know you probably don't want to talk to me, but I'd like to know how you are." I smiled. There it was. The discomfort, the doubt, the crack. I finally replied, but briefly. "I'm fine. Nothing more, nothing less." It didn't take her long to answer. "I'm glad," really a lie. I could feel her even through the screen. "What do you want?" I muttered, looking at the phone, and as if she had heard me, the next message came. "Can we see each other? Just talk." There it was. The moment that months ago I would have waited for with desperation, and now I simply evaluated it. I thought about everything, about how she left me, how she replaced me, how she came back when things didn't go as expected, because yes, I already knew. I had heard enough. The intense love hadn't changed. It was still the same chaos, the same man, the same fights. The same story repeating itself, and now she was looking for a way out. I agreed, but not for the reasons she thought. We met at the same coffee shop where we first met. When I arrived, she was already there and for a second time seemed to bend. She was the same, but not. There was something different, less shine, more tiredness. She saw me and smiled, but it wasn't the same smile. "Hi," she said, getting up slightly. "Hi." I sat in front of her, exactly where it had all started. How ironic. At first she talked about superficial things, work, life, routine, as if we were catching up after a short trip. But we both knew that wasn't it. "You look good," she said finally. "I am." The answer was simple, but it made her uncomfortable. I noticed. She fidgeted with her hands for a few seconds before speaking again. I wanted to apologize. There it was. Late, very late. For how I ended everything, she continued. It wasn't fair. I looked at her in silence, waiting for more. "I was wrong," she added. "I thought he had changed." I didn't say anything because I didn't need her to explain it to me. I already knew. "And now I understand a lot of things," she said, lowering her voice. "I understand what I lost." That phrase. Months ago, it would have broken me. Now it just confirms something to me. People only value things when they lose them. "And what do you want from me now?" I finally asked. She looked up with something I hadn't seen before. Vulnerability. I don't know, she admitted. I just wanted to see you, talk to you, maybe try to fix things. Silence. A heavy, dense silence. Fix. I repeated slowly. She nodded. Yes, I know it won't be easy, but I think we can still. I didn't let her finish because I had heard enough, and at that moment I understood that this was the real breaking point. Not when she left me, but now, when she was coming back, because this time the decision was mine. I looked at her in silence, and for the first time since I met her, I didn't feel the need to save her. Before I would have looked for the right words, I would have tried to understand her, justify her, rebuild what she herself had destroyed. But that man was no longer there to fix. I repeated, leaning slightly forward. Do you know what's funny? She watched me expectantly. That you broke something that I spent months rebuilding just in me. Her expression changed. I'm not the same. I continued. And that's something you can't fix. She looked down as if each word weighed more than she expected. I know, she whispered, but people can change. I smiled, but it wasn't a kind smile. Yes, I changed. That made her look up. But you, I added, you did the same old thing. The silence fell between us again, but this time it wasn't uncomfortable for me. It was liberating. He didn't change, she said suddenly, as if she needed to justify herself. Everything went back to the way it was. The fights, the silence, disappearing for days. I know, I interrupted her. She frowned. You know, I always knew. She froze for a few seconds. Then why didn't you stop me? I let out a small laugh. Incredulous. Stop you. I repeated. You're not a child. You made a decision. But you knew what he was like, and so did you. That left her speechless because it was true. She didn't come back out of ignorance. She came back because she wanted to, and now she was there facing the consequences. I thought with you everything was too easy, she confessed after a while. And with him it was intense. I nodded slowly. Yes, I remember that word. I was confused, she added. I thought that was love. I looked her directly in the eyes. You didn't think chaos was love. Her eyes filled with tears, but she didn't cry. And now I know it wasn't. Now that he broke you again. That sentence was direct, cold, unnecessary. She leaned a little towards me. I didn't come to justify myself, she said. I came because I miss you. There it was. The truth wasn't I'm sorry. It wasn't I was wrong. I miss you because now I was alone. Because now it hurt. Because now I was the safe option again. But this time I understood. I'm going to tell you something, I said, resting my hands on the table. And listen to it well. She nodded tensely. I missed you too. Her eyes lit up for a second. For weeks, even months, that sparkle grew. I missed your voice, your laugh, even your weird silences. She smiled slightly, as if she had recovered something. And then, but I also miss my dignity, I added. The smile disappeared, and it was hard for her to get it back. Silence. Every day, I didn't write to you. Every time I didn't check your social media. Every time I forced myself to move on, I paused. That's what rebuilt me. We could try again, she whispered. This time it would be different. I shook my head slowly. No, a single word, clear, firm, definitive. Her lips trembled slightly. You wouldn't even consider it. No. Why? I looked at her intently, because I learned something very valuable. She leaned a little closer, as if she needed to hear it. When someone changes you for someone else, they're not losing you by accident. I paused. They're choosing to lose you. Her eyes filled with tears, this time unable to hold them back. And I continued. I don't want to be an option anymore. She covered her mouth with her hand, trying to maintain her composure. I thought you still felt something for me. Yes, I replied without hesitation. That surprised her. But feeling isn't enough. Silence. I learned to respect myself more than I loved you. That sentence was the end. I felt it in the air, in her posture, in how she stopped trying. We stayed for a few seconds without talking, and then I got up. Take care, I said. Simple. No drama. No resentment. No turning back. She didn't answer. She just nodded with tears falling silently. And for the first time, it wasn't me who stayed. When I left the coffee shop, the air felt different, lighter, cleaner, as if I had finally closed something that had been open for too long. I walked aimlessly for a few minutes, breathing deeply, and then I understood. It wasn't about her. It was never about her. It was about me, about what I allowed, about what I learned, about who I became after everything. Months later, Someone mentioned her name again. I think she got back with him again. I smiled slightly. Some people don't change. They repeat, they fall, they go back and again. But not me. I wasn't in that cycle anymore, because while she was going back to the past, I had built something better myself, and that no one was going to take away from me.